The most horrible true crime story of the year, possibly the decade, has just happened in France. Before we get into the details, I have to start with a strong disclaimer. This is a true crime video. We're going to talk about a graphic and disturbing crime that honestly really has me shooken. And I stayed up late thinking about it. This is a story that is over a decade and possibly multiple decades long. And it's just now coming to court. The victim in this case is a French woman who is 72 years old. So she is a grandmother age, and her name is Gazelle Pellicot. I'm sharing that because she says not only that the police saved her life, but that she wanted to make sure that her court hearings were not private, but were public to spread awareness of this kind of crime, and also that anyone that realizes that they were a participant in this kind of crime, a victim or otherwise, will come forward and stop this kind of thing from happening in the future. I consider her an ultimate survivor. What happened to her is and was completely unthinkable, unimaginable. It's vicious, it's violent, it's a violation on the deepest level. And to make matters worse, it was perpetrated by her husband, at least allegedly. I guess this is still on trial, although the husband has not defended himself in this matter. He has very publicly and directly acknowledged that he committed the crimes that he's being held accountable for. Let's go from the beginning. So we have Giselle Pellicot, 72. Her husband, and it's hard for me to even say this, her husband, over the last decade, has given her sleeping pills and anxiety pills so that she's unconscious, and then recruited men from the internet, and not just some men. We're talking at least 80 or 90 men that we know of, to come grape his unconscious wife, which he then recorded and shared with other people. According to her, she was sacrificed on the altar of vice. She was treated like a rag doll. And this whole story is just so unthinkable that your husband, that you've been married to for like 40 or 50 years, would do this to anyone, much less you. And the man on the screen is the husband. You can see Gazelle or Giselle, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. On the left, you see her husband on the right, and I consider him the worst kind of monster. I mean, it is unthinkable. And he does not deny it at all. In court, he said yes when asked if he was guilty to these crimes. His lawyer said that he always declared himself guilty. He said it very simply, the husband did. I put her to sleep, I offered her, and I filmed. If that's not the most cold-blooded thing you've ever heard. All we know right now, only 50 men are on trial, but we know is there's upward of 70 to 80 to 90 men that were involved.
Contains distressing detail.
One woman's voice shook France to the core today. Pellicot, walking tall, choosing to face the cameras as she came to tell her bone-chilling story. Are these 51 Frenchmen, all accused?
And get this, most of these men that were involved lived in the area. And the area is not big. According to the news articles I read online when I was doing research for this video, the town's like 6,000 people. And if you have had a crime committed against you with 50, 70, or 90 people in your small community, think about the fact that she would probably run into these men in the town while she was at the grocery store, getting a coffee at a local cafe in town, maybe while walking in the park or going to church. I mean, this is a small town. She was very likely to run into some of these people. And because of the nature of the crimes and the people who would perpetrate these kinds of crimes, My guess is that they might get their rocks off by seeing her in public, knowing that she is unaware of what's happening to her. By the way, they range from like 26 years old to around the same age as Gazelle when these crimes happened, which apparently started when she was about 59, lasted nearly 10 years. They took place in the couple's home. The husband would encourage the men while the crimes were being committed with what's been called degrading language. There was no money that had changed hands, apparently, that we know of. And some of these men didn't do this just once, but some men repeated up to 6 times. There are so many perpetrators. This happened probably well over 100 times to this poor lady. You might be wondering, well, how wouldn't she know that something was going on? Well, she did know something was going on, but nobody except those who were the perpetrators knew the reality, because all she knew is she started to have difficulty remembering things. She couldn't concentrate. She was afraid of taking the train. She lost weight. She had problems controlling her body, like controlling her arm, according to some of the reports. And in her mind, believe it or not, although they weren't a rich couple, she thought they were happy. Some of their friends even said that they were the ideal couple, as gross as that sounds now that we know the truth. But she didn't realize what was going on with her had anything to do with her husband or these terrible crimes. Honestly, her and her children, her adult children, thought that she might have Alzheimer's disease. She was talking about that with her husband, and they even booked an appointment to get her checked out at the doctor. And what's crazy too, because I think all this is crazy, what's crazy too is that the only way that this actually came to light is that the husband was actually caught filming up women's skirts at a supermarket. So there's really no telling what else this guy had been up to and has been up to for the last few decades. And that led the French police to find pictures and videos on his computer, on his hard drive, with a folder that was labeled a crime. That's all I can say. I don't think I can even say that on YouTube. It was labeled clearly as a crime. And they found hundreds of pictures and videos of his wife, unconscious and mostly in the fetal position. And check this out. They counted 92 crimes committed by 72 men. Only 50 of the men have been identified so far. There's also been pictures, inappropriate pictures of other family members on the computer. And because of that, one of the couple's daughters burst into tears and had to leave the courtroom with her 2 brothers. The videos of the crime were also shared on websites. Some of those 51 men that have been identified just clearly confessed to their participation. Others said that they were not aware of Giselle's condition and thought she was consenting to these crimes. I guess even though the husband has confessed, this is all, I guess, alleged until the conviction comes in. So I'm just making allegations, talking about what I'm hearing about in the news. But I think that because the husband has confessed and a lot of these other men have already confessed and acknowledged what they've done, that even what we know for sure is horrendous. We know that Giselle has contracted multiple STDs, which, again, horrible, terrible. Of course, this was her husband's doing. He was the orchestrator, the mastermind of all of this. And all the other men were complicit as well. Anybody who knew that this was happening are just unthinkably morally bankrupt and guilty in my eyes. And not only did this happen to Gazelle, but then she had to watch the videos, see the photographs of herself. She had to explain all of this to her adult children. And there's so many things that Gazelle said that are just heart-wrenching. And one of those things is that when she was explaining what happened to her adult children, she said her daughter's scream, quote, was etched into her memory. She said she left the house with 2 suitcases, which was all that was left after 50 years of life together. She said, I have no longer have an identity. and that she also said, I don't know if I'll ever rebuild myself. I think that she has shown miraculous strength and calm. Thankfully, she has her children and probably some other family and friends. And I would say a worldwide community surrounding her with their love and support. The trial is happening in Avignon, which I might be pronouncing that terribly wrong. I'm studying French, but not sure that was correct. It's expected to last 4 months. Dominique, the husband, has confessed to these. The other 50 or so defendants are likely to face prison time. I hope so, if convicted of their crimes. The news reports that I've read said they might face 20 years in prison, which does not seem like enough time for what happened. I think they should all be in prison for the rest of their lives. Before I go into this other revelation that honestly, most news articles didn't even mention this part of it, but before I reveal that, that makes all of this, I think, even worse, possibly much worse. I want to point out that when Gazelle first heard about her husband getting caught for filming 3 women under their skirts in a public venue, he had admitted that to her, I guess because he was caught and knew it would come out. And she said, shocked at first because in half a century and 50 years of their marriage, he had never made any obscene gestures, she said, at least not to her or around her. And believe it or not, she told him that she would forgive him for that, but that there would be no next time and that he would have to apologize to those women. And she said, I could not imagine what I would discover next. Now let's go over this part. And that is, which might not surprise us at this point, that Dominique Pellicot is also accused of the rape and ending of a 23-year-old estate agent in Paris in 1991. Now we're talking about a crime that stretches back nearly 30 years or so. And this person was also made unconscious. I think it's called chemical submission, France. But she had the same kind of crime committed to her here, but also she was stabbed in the chest. There was another estate agent who was only 19 at the time who was attacked in a similar circumstance, but escaped after fighting back. Police have said DNA extracted from blood at that scene matched his profile. So there's no telling what else this guy has done in the time since. You don't just do that kind of stuff and then you don't do it for another 10 years. No, he was probably, almost certainly, I would say, doing other things that he has not been caught for back then. Maybe goes back a very long time, but certainly in that decade between those alleged attacks that he's being accused of in the 1990s, between then and when he started perpetrating crimes against his own wife, I'm almost certain that he was up to no good in that time as well. I think this makes it so much worse because these crimes go back much further than most people are reporting. And I think there's a lot more victims out there. And I hope that the publicity that this trial is bringing to this case will bring other people to the forefront so that Dominique will have to take accountability for everything that he has done or allegedly done. I'd like to end the video by simply sharing my deepest sympathies and support for Giselle and her family and anyone else that is a victim of this sort of crime. Thanks for watching.